Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to, well, a bit of a replay to start off with. I figured it had been a while since I last showed off any console gameplay, and so I poked both Jack the Ripper and Mad Friday, and Jack the Ripper was the one that got back to me first, and he actually sent me two games in this thing, the Brazilian M41 Walker Bulldog, which is a tier 8 light tank with a rather funny ammo selection. It's a 90mm gun, but it has high explosive plastic as its standard, it gets heat ammo as I think it's premium, and then there's a third kind of HE ammo which is apparently not very good, and I'm guessing that's the one that Jack doesn't have any of. Now the thing that connects these two replays is they both have weather effects, and I decided against using this one even though it is a reasonably good result because, well, it was kind of hard to tell what was going on, and I suspect that's why, as Jack tells me, it's not all that popular as a particular thing in the console version. Now, of course, we have weather effects in warships as well. We have storms, and like in warships, well, it decreases visibility. So, although it looks cool and all, quite often it's rather annoying, and I find this myself in warships. It's sometimes interesting as a different thing because it forces everybody closer together and it can make for some interesting gameplay sometimes, but a lot of the time it just hampers you, it just gets in the way, and it can stop you having what otherwise might have been a really good game because you just can't get close enough to anything to do any damage. So this is the full replay. It's Durpenberg, and this time it's a blizzard. It'd be a bit weird if it was a sandstorm again, but who knows. Anyway, so he's pushed up rather forward. It's an assault game, so they're going to have to be a bit careful about leaving the cap undefended. But as for Jack, well, he has just pressed forward rather aggressively and is trying to spot anything that might have crossed the river on this southern end of the map. And as you can see, he's got to get a bit closer to do it. Maybe a bit closer than one would be comfortable with normally, because although he's going to be less easily spotted himself, well, he's doing damage here. So, you know, he's firing his gun, he is going to get spotted, and it just gives him less reaction time. And also it means it's easier for the enemy to shoot him. So that's almost half his health gone already. That was not particularly pleasant, and that seemed like a bit of a snapshot from that tank destroyer as well. There are in fact a fair few tank destroyers on this particular lineup, especially on the enemy side, so I mean it's only 4 on their own side, which is not so bad, but it's half a dozen of the enemy team are tank destroyers, so he really doesn't want to get hit by those guns particularly. They could take most of his remaining health, if not outright kill him entirely, so he does have to be a bit careful here. So again, trying to pick up those enemy tanks for his allies, and it actually looks like a fair few of his own team are on this flank, although I don't know how much of this is due to reduced radio range as well, because I'm guessing like there's at least one tank that crossed the river in the north and it's just briefly popped into contact there, so I'm guessing the weather effects also affect your radio range, which would also be annoying, almost more annoying if you can't see what your own team's doing. But regardless, it does look like there is a fair few of his own tanks that have come down this way. So having taken another hit from the tank destroyer and now being on a mere 158 hit points, yeah, he can't quite afford to be as aggressive anymore. So instead it's his platoon mates in the 54 lightweight who is now doing the spotting. That was a recording derp there, by the way. That wasn't on my end, because as with consoles footage generally, this is me showing it to you provided as is. You know, this was the game as it was played, because there are not console replays as such. It's people recording it on their PC essentially. You have to have a capture card of some kind. So, they've cleared out the tanks that cross down this end, and it actually seems to have been half-ish of the enemy team, but now they are being capped, so whichever heavy that was that crossed, and I think there was at least one more heavy that was near the cap as well, they've been taken out by the enemy team. And this is Kind of bad news, except it's only 2 tanks capping, so in theory they do have enough time to get back. There's a heavy reasonably close by, and Jack himself, of course, is in a pretty fast tank. I think this thing can do 72 kilometers an hour, something like that. I mean, it's a Walker Bulldog, and I think it actually has, well, of course it's a premium, it only has 1 engine, but looking at the actual, you know, the actual the wiki page of this thing, when the Brazilians bought these things and put them into service, they put in upgraded engines essentially, but that might already be, you know, taken account of when you're playing the regular Walker Bulldog in terms of engine upgrades, so it might not actually be better in terms of horsepower per ton, but still, it's a Walker Bulldog, it's fast. That was all very long-winded. So he's managed to get in and get a bit more damage out of that Jag Tiger. And, oh, there's Ferdinand. He's going to have to be a little bit careful about that. And not run into a house, which is exactly what he's done. But fortunately, he wasn't spotted there. So, yeah, there's nothing else that could have really shot at him. So he's safe there. So he pops out, takes another shot. And the Ferdy actually manages to resist it. And gets spotted, but he's able to back out of the line of sight almost immediately, so that was not too risky. There's also a 1319 nearby, who appears to be on the river? I'm guessing, I mean, logically the river will be completely frozen, so you won't be able to drown, in principle. Maybe I'm wrong about that, I don't know, but maybe they fell off and fell onto their side, or maybe they got set on fire and that's why the damage was ticking up like that. But regardless, you know, Durbanberg and somebody managing to fall in the river seems like a fairly usual thing. So. Yes, it's good to see some traditions being preserved. So that's the Borsig out of the way, but unfortunately for Jack, there's still an artillery left alive. And I say unfortunately because, yeah. Now this was literally just as his platoon mate found the artillery, so the RT isn't going to last too much longer, and the remaining E75, who was hanging around in the middle for some reason, is now severely outnumbered and basically doomed. But yeah, it's a pity Jack didn't survive this one, because he spent the majority of the game, well, I say the majority, like half the game maybe, on not a lot of hit points. And considering he was on not a lot of hit points, he's actually done rather well. 2.8k damage with 4.7k assists. And he also spotted 8 of the enemy team. So that was all, unsurprisingly, enough to put him at the top of the team list. But his platoon mate in the lightweight also did very well. Alfax Alex there, with actually a little more damage done, but presumably not nearly so much spotting. Well, I say presumably, actually, there was a scorecard thing for him briefly, but I've done a little editing at the end here. So, yeah, that was a pretty good round, and I can see why. I can see why weather effects aren't as popular on console, because often just not being able to see what's going on. Like, this game was alright, this Sandstorm game, but you just couldn't see what was going on. In fact, this moment here was probably one of the more interesting ones, where he gets into a rather close quarters engagement with the IS-3 and the Torty. But yeah, for the most part, like, as an occasional thing, it can be okay, but if it happens too often, it's just irritating. So yeah, I don't know, I suppose it just depends how often it happens on the console. But anyway, it's nice to look at anyway, and it's interesting to see. And it's also, I think, not even the first replay of his I've had with weather effects. I'm sure I've shown an Island Storm one where I remember commenting about it being a very quiet storm, all things considered. So, yeah, I think this is one of those things I'm quite happy for it to stay on console, even if it does look rather nice. So hopefully you've enjoyed this replay, and, well, replay in a bit. And if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and, as always, stay tuned for more.